I think we should probably go ahead and get started because we have a lot to cover today and we're scheduled for half an hour. So we're hopefully going to be able to get through it all and also get to your questions. Welcome to revealing our research on minimum lot sizes. For those who are unfamiliar with Desegregate Connecticut, next slide, please. We are a pro-homes coalition of neighbors and nonprofits, and we've been working since June of 2020 to address land use issues and particularly zoning laws at both the state and local levels that we believe have a reason to be reformed. We think that reform will lead to a more equitable and sustainable state. And among our coalition, there are about 80 members. Several of them have appeared in events this fall. We're fortunate to have a representative of another coalition member here today, speaking with her expertise on the topic of the day. But we're really proud that we have a highly intersectional coalition that's working to advance land use reforms in Connecticut. Today, you have three speakers. Nick Abbott, who you are probably familiar with if you've attended one of our other events, Deputy Director. You want to say hi, Nick? All right, he's saying hi.
Finding my mute button. Hi, everybody.
All right, I'm Sarah Bronin. I helped to found this organization as a representative of Desegregate Connecticut. And with us today is Walker Holmes, who is with the Trust for Public Land. And Walker, I'll turn it over to you to maybe introduce yourself and just say a word about the Trust for Public Land.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. So I'm Walker Holmes. I'm Connecticut State Director for the Trust for Public Land. We're a national nonprofit organization, and for close to 50 years, we've worked together with communities to create the parks and public spaces that we all need and deserve. And in short, we believe in outdoors for all because we know that communities that place a high value on outdoor access for everyone are healthier, more equitable, more resilient. All attributes that I suspect everyone here today is supportive of. So many thanks to Sarah and the Desegregate Connecticut team for having me today.
Great. And so our agenda today starts with a discussion about what minimum lot sizes are. We're trying not to assume any base level of information. So I'll talk briefly about that. We're going to next talk about how minimum lot sizes hurt Connecticut. What are the implications of very large minimum lot sizes? Then we're going to go into some more details about research that you may have already seen previewed on our website and in social media about the particulars of Connecticut's minimum lot size zoning. And then finally, we will discuss what you might be able to do about it. So my part in this is just to start with the basic question, what are minimum lot sizes? So minimum lot sizes are an amount of land or an amount of a zoning lot that's required anytime somebody builds a new unit of housing or converts some other use to a residential use. So you might have, which is very common in Connecticut, as you'll see, for a single family house, a 1 acre minimum lot size, meaning that in order to build a single family home, you need 1 acre of land. In other cases, you might not have any minimum lot sizes. That's the case in some Connecticut communities, and you can see that very clearly on our zoning atlas. The larger the minimum lot size, the fewer homes can be created within any particular area. So looking broadly at how scholars and researchers have looked at minimum lot sizes, in general, there seems to be agreement that anything over a ½ acre is considered large. So Bob Ellickson, a Yale law professor, recently studied minimum lot sizes in the Silicon Valley, in the Austin region, and in the New Haven region in Connecticut. He presented his research in our fall series last year. So you may remember that presentation, and he's doing a book about it. But again, his research characterizes ½ acre lot sizes as pretty large. As we'll see in a moment, Connecticut does have not just large half-acre lot sizes, but very large 1 acre or more. Some cities have very low minimum lot sizes. So Houston, where I'm from, which doesn't have zoning, but does have minimum lot size requirements, reduced in a large swath of the city lot sizes to 1,400 square feet. For those who are doing the math, an acre is about 43,000 square feet in 1998. And when Houston did that, it prompted a housing boom that you still see today. So with that brief introduction to minimum lot sizes, I'm going to turn it over to Nick, who's going to talk about how minimum lot sizes affect a lot of different aspects, and specifically how they affect Connecticut.
Thanks, Sarah. So first off, to provide a bit of context for minimum lot sizes in Connecticut, what we've seen in looking at some of the town-by-town histories in Connecticut is that minimum lot sizes have not always been so stringent in Connecticut. And in particular, they were put in place in response largely to a large growth in new housing development throughout the state. We've seen in a lot of towns that actually the ability to subdivide property and to build a lot of houses on small lots fueled population growth in some of the most high opportunity parts of our state. As we saw more development of moderate density housing, though, throughout the state, we saw a rise in response of large lot requirements that limited the development of new homes and limited the density of single family homes or of multifamily homes throughout lots of our towns, leading to a plateau in population growth at the same time or shortly after these new requirements were put in place. And over the past 50 years, we've seen a tremendous number of negative impacts from the imposition of large lot requirements. This relates to equity, which is really the driving force for our group. The reduction in the number of homes that can be built has made housing more expensive. And on the one hand, this is a simple supply and demand problem. And in particular, this is a problem because the towns in Connecticut that oftentimes have the most demand have also put in place the most stringent and highest large lot size requirements. And that's what we've seen, as we'll show later on with some of the data that Sarah's going to talk about. This is a strong correlation between the towns with the largest lot requirements and the income of residents, as well as the racial makeup of given towns' population. So we know that by reducing minimum lot sizes, the counterfactual is that we're able to produce housing that is likely to be more affordable to moderate income people and to more diverse populations. On the economy side, we also know that minimum lot sizes, by reducing home construction, limit the development and economic growth of our towns and cities. In particular, we know that relates not just to construction, the jobs that go into actually building more homes, but the long-term economic benefits that come from having more homes, particularly at moderate density near our downtown areas and where the infrastructure can support it, which is a key need in order to supply the housing needs for our state to enable economic growth, which is something we've heard from employers and labor unions from around the state. We also know that large minimum lot sizes, by spreading us further away from our downtown centers, increase infrastructure costs by a high amount, burdening not just our economy, but in particular taxpayers, costing more to bring internet, electricity, water, and sewer services to large lot neighborhoods. We were really excited to see a recently published paper studying the effects of residential zoning in US housing markets and of minimum lot sizes in particular in Connecticut, which we were really excited to learn about. And this paper found a number of negative consequences associated with large lot requirements. And the flip side was that this paper found that having or reducing minimum lot size requirements could help increase the supply of single family homes drastically, decrease the price of those homes to make them more affordable, but also have little to no effect on existing home values when affected on a statewide level, assuaging some of the concerns about reductions in property values that we've seen with some zoning reform efforts. And then lastly, something that is really important to us and that we'll hear from Walker about is the effect on the environment. We know that minimum lot sizes, by setting a high threshold for the amount of land you need to build a home, push people further and further away from their jobs, from services, and from retail. And that by sprawling us out further. In particular, we're increasing our transportation-related emissions. In addition to the carbon component, we also know it's eating up Connecticut's forests and farmland, which we know are increasingly disappearing as we increase residential development further and further away from our concentrated areas of development, which is something that we're going to hear a bit more about in a second. So, in sum, we know that large minimum lot sizes have a hugely negative environmental impact, and particularly as this issue is at the fore of statewide and local discussions throughout Connecticut around policy. I think this is one of the key ways localities and that our state can, improve environmental outcomes by, getting rid of regulations that force us to have large lawns, to drive more, and to deforest some of our most sensitive lands. And with that, I will hand it off to Walker to talk a little bit about the work that the Trust for Public Land is doing and how they think about minimum lot size requirements.
Thanks, Nick. So I will add 3 points about parks and open space as a frame for this conversation about sensible minimum lot sizes. The first is some context in the form of state and national goals for conserved lands. Years ago, the state of Connecticut set a goal of protecting 21% of Connecticut's land area by 2023. And pre-pandemic, we were about 76% toward that goal. And then a new national goal had laid out in the America the Beautiful report has upped the ante even more. Protect 30% of our nation's lands and waters by 2030. The drivers of this goal are disappearance of nature, climate change, inequitable access to the outdoors. So all things that very much apply in Connecticut. So we have goals to meet, work to do, and with every one step forward, we also go 2 steps back. Nick already cited the loss of forest land and farmland that we're experiencing in Connecticut. And next, I'll give you 2 principles to consider, both of which are critical components of making this state a place where people want to and are able to live, work, and play. So the next slide is the 10-minute walk. We at the Trust for Public Land believe that everyone deserves a high-quality park within a 10-minute walk of home. So what does that look like in Connecticut? The map on the next slide pulls data from our ParkServe mapping tool, which measures park access in census-defined urban areas. So what you're seeing here is the blobs of brown and red. Those are our census-defined urban areas. 83% of Connecticut's population lives in what's considered to be an urban area where a 10-minute walk could conceivably be possible. And in the red and orange areas you're seeing here, that's showing that about 50% of residents in census-defined urban areas already don't have a park within a 10-minute walk of home. Large minimum lot sizes make the 10-minute walk very difficult. The large lots essentially privatize open space. So bigger residential lots for some ends up meaning fewer parks for all. Second principle is the idea of outdoors for all. The next slide uses another one of our national mapping tools. This one is called CORE. And it shows how sprawl impacts access to recreational opportunity. Outdoor recreation is a huge generator of economic activity. It also plays a big role in quality of life. And what you're seeing here is brown and red in this map are development and sprawl. As that land use type increases, as its footprint grows, recreational opportunity decreases. We have, if you dig into this map and really look carefully at the various different shades of green, we've already lost all of what we would call backcountry or wilderness here in Connecticut. And we've lost almost all of our mid-country. Even our front country is at great risk. And if people are interested, I'm happy to go into details later on what those definitions are. Bigger residential lots for some means fewer recreational opportunities for all. So with those principles, I'll turn it back to Nick and the rest of the team.
Great. So I think I'm going to pick up here and talk about our more specific research about minimum lot sizes in Connecticut that draw from our zoning atlas, which hopefully you're familiar with and you can see an image of in the next slide. I'll put a link in the chat for how you can follow along and pull up these maps for yourself and pull up your maps for your own towns. So this is the general zoning atlas. You can see if you've been there before, you can click on the tools on the left. As soon as you click on one type of housing, you'll be able to pick the minimum lot size that's required for that type of housing. So if you go on to the next slide, we found that after painstakingly district by district, lot by lot, tying each of 2,403 mapped zoning districts in Connecticut through the GIS layers that we created for the zoning atlas, that 98.3%, and you can highlight it in red by clicking again, of land that is in what we're deeming to be primarily residential areas has a minimum lot size. If you click again, you'll see that it's actually less of an issue. There's in 4 or more family housing, you don't see as many required minimum lot sizes. You do, however, see that in single family housing. If you've been, and you can click to the next slide, to our presentations before, you have seen the map that shows that 91% of Connecticut is zoned to allow a single family housing. In this slide, you see that 81% of residential land that's primarily residential, actually requires a 0.92 acre minimum lot size for single family housing. And so in this presentation, again, because minimum lot sizes are so dominant for single family housing, and because single family housing is the most common type of zoning overwhelmingly in the state, we do focus in this presentation on single family housing, although we have statistics in the other areas as well. So this image shows an acre of land and 15 units on 1 acre of land, just as a frame of reference. We're using this image actually in our proposal regarding transit-oriented communities, which we did a similar presentation to this on research last week. And I encourage you to look at on the transit-oriented communities page of our website. It's another half hour of just debriefing on that and a full report about that. But this is just meant to show you, again, one option for getting 15 times the number of units on a single acre than we overwhelmingly currently allow. So in the next slide, we also see it through the zoning atlas that 49% of residential land requires 1.84 acres per single family home. So the reason it's 1.84 acres, and I see a lot of planners and commissioners on this call, is that a lot of zoning codes have R80 zoning for 80,000 square feet, and that's just shy of 2 acres. So sometimes we'll say about 2 acres. When we logged it in the zoning atlas, we used the 80,000 square feet as basically the 2 acre equivalent because it was so close. So 1.84 acres. So half of land, and you can see from Walker's maps that many of these areas correspond to those areas that she identified where forested land and open space was being compromised. So next slide. In fact, over 50% of the land area of 68 towns in our state have essentially 2 acre minimum lot requirements. So if your town is on this list, and we're using the zoning atlas and we're happy to get any updated data that you have, but if your town is on this list, what it means is that over half of the land in your town allows single family housing but requires that single family housing to be over 2 acres. Next slide. And with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Pete Harrison, who is our senior advocacy fellow, who, due to my own error, was not on the initial slide, but has become a very valuable team member. And he's going to talk about how, now that you know, well, we just covered the tip of the iceberg in terms of our research, but now that you know a little bit more about minimum lot sizes, how you might think about advocating for change in your community, and to talk about our proposal for the statewide legislative session that'll start in February. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate the introduction. So yes, I'll just very quickly talk about two primary options that you can get involved right now. The first is at the local level changes, and particularly for folks that are planners or commissioners on this call right now, any town can change its zoning code to reduce minimum lot sizes right now, obviously having that right. If you're interested in doing that, we're happy to work with towns individually through our zoning atlas or with advocates on our Be the Change playbooks to talk about how to promote that at the local level. It's a really important part of what we do as an organization. And the second part, of course, is state level changes, which I'll talk about in more detail in a second. But the Connecticut legislature can follow what Vermont just did very recently and create guidelines for towns to encourage minimum lot sizes on sewers and public water through the Zoning Enabling Act. So just next slide. Our proposal for this coming legislative session is pretty straightforward. If there is a sewer or water connection already in place, we encourage a minimum lot size should be 1/8 of an acre. As you can see on the map here, on our atlas, we've kind of mapped out where existing water infrastructure currently exists as a frame of reference. We, of course, will have some very common sense carve outs for environmentally sensitive lands or otherwise unable to build. But yes, again, if you have any interest in learning more in your town, consult our atlas for where water exists. We think that with the Build Back Better infrastructure bill, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to upgrade those systems. So some towns that are concerned about this capacity, we have a really good opportunity to address that. Next slide. So as we've kind of talked about already, just very quickly, why we think this will be very beneficial to Connecticut. The primary one is more homes for more people means lower costs. This is, as Nick described it, a supply-demand issue in Connecticut in a lot of cases, and reducing the lot size has a significant reduction of overall housing construction costs, creates more availability, more diversity of housing stock, which is great for folks that are homeowners or home renters. More homes where infrastructure already exists has an immense benefit for the environment, as we've discussed already, reducing our car trips and our need for more roads and infrastructure, preserves our forests, our farmlands, and takes advantage of the infrastructure that we've already spent money from our local and state level resources to construct. And finally, more homes means more construction jobs, more long-term jobs, more encouragement of mixed-use development. So this is an economic boom, as Sarah mentioned in Houston. There's just overwhelming evidence that this creates a kind of economic development that we so sorely need in Connecticut. And then one of the final things that often comes up is, what does this impact on existing homeowners' property values? And there is overwhelming evidence that more infill, more walkability drives up home prices for existing homeowners. So we think there's a really good opportunity in this legislative session and beyond to talk about the benefits for existing residents and homeowners and alleviate any of these kinds of misplaced concerns with some of the data. Next slide. Oh, sorry, we had a visual aid there. So we have some great resources available for folks that want to learn more about what we're doing, more about minimum lot sizes. Specifically, we've got these great one-pagers that we can do sort of at the town level. These are all at our website link, which is on the slide here. Next slide. As I already mentioned, we have some great resources for folks that are advocates that want to show up and talk about this in local planning and zoning meetings or help us at the state level. We have them also for commissioners and otherwise officials in towns to talk about being a pro-homes person already that's in power. And then also for other advocate groups that are interested in helping us and joining the coalition, how to think about organizing around whatever core issue you might have, how you can talk about your issue in the context of a pro-homes agenda. Next slide. And speaking for the folks that are on the call that are planners or commissioners, one of our next events coming up in our fall series is a workshop to be a Pro Homes Commissioner, which will talk in more detail both about our proposals and about the Be the Change playbook, and really hopefully build up some relationships for folks that want to see this change and take some initiative at the town level. We're really excited about this one. So please sign up for this event. It's on our desegregate.org events page. I think Sarah will share that link directly. So we're really looking forward to having folks join us for that next one coming up. And we'll have a number of other series of events going over our proposal as we lead into the legislative session.
Okay, so with that, if we have any questions or comments, feel free to pipe up or to send them to Nick or myself in the chat. I believe you should be able to do that. And also happy to just putting the events page in the chat. We're really excited to have in the first 2 weeks of December some national experts who will also be able to chime in on these issues and how they work nationally and their own research on this. I'm also going to put Trust for Public Land Resources, in particular, some of the things that Walker showed in a link in the chat as well. Any quick comments or questions? We know everybody's spending time with us on their lunch hour.
We got a question about how smaller lots that might be non-conforming, but that that are non-conforming are relevant to this issue and how they factor in.
You know, that's actually the issue that the Vermont legislation focused in on is non-conforming very small lots. So I think our hope would be that by reducing minimum lot sizes in areas where there's infrastructure, you would make more non-conforming lots conforming, which would enable housing to be built on those lots. And again, take advantage of existing water and sewer infrastructure. We also see that many non-conforming lots are lots that tend to be developed historically, decades ago. Looking at the way Connecticut used to develop, of course, small towns had centers of gravity with maybe lots that were not even regulated at all. And oftentimes we view those areas that developed, let's say even 100 years ago, as the areas that are most charming, most walkable, least car dependent, and in fact, most environmentally friendly. So non-conforming lots, in some ways, especially those developed in that historical context, have a lot of value, and the extent to which we sometimes make it difficult to develop on non-conforming lots is probably problematic if we want to try to recreate that New England charm that we've zoned out of existence with large lot sizes and minimum parking requirements. Any other questions you got, Nick?
I got 3 more questions here, which I'll fire off here. I'll take the first one and I'll let you take the second 2. So first, we got a question about what about areas where there's minimum lot size already below 1/8 of an acre? For example, lots of New Haven, or I think almost all of New Haven at this point has a minimum lot size below 1/8 of an acre. So I'll take that one, which is to say that our proposal would be to set a cap on minimum lot sizes. Certainly, there are a lot of areas that should be well below 1/8 of an acre, and certainly the bill would not affect those areas that are below that cap or that have no minimum lot size at all. Another question we got, which relates to some of the work we did last session, was about alternative septic systems and how that plays into discussions around minimum lot sizes. So I'll throw that one over to Sarah, and then we'll close up with one last question.
So actually, there is a whole commission that was convened, or at least started to be convened with legislation last year, HB 6107, which you can find information on our website, which is intended to study this issue of the connection between septic and housing development. There was a small provision that changed last year on accessory dwellings, but we are hopeful that because our focused statewide proposal is on places which would not require septic, that at least our statewide proposal will be, will, I guess, sidestep that issue, which the legislature's new commission is hopefully going to study. As for individual towns that wish to change minimum lot sizes in areas of septic, I'll only say, without being a technical expert, that that lots of different constituencies seem to agree that septic systems have become much more sophisticated and may not require the amount of land that they historically required in order to have the leaching fields and things like that. Of course, again, our hope is that from an environmental perspective, we can rely on more dedicated lines than that kind of infrastructure. And that's what our proposal aims to do. There's one more.
It's one more. I know we're at the end of our half hour, but our last question is about how the proposal thinks about differences between urban and rural areas or areas that lack infrastructure. So maybe we can get into some of the details of the proposal about the areas that it's limited to.
Yeah, do you want to repeat, or I don't want to take that question?
Yeah, Nick, you want to grab it?
Sure. So if I can get back up on our slides here to the substance of our proposal, I think the beauty of this proposal from our perspective is that it takes into account differences between towns in particular, and making sure it's limited to the areas that can actually support a higher density of housing, in particular those areas that have a connection to water and sewer. So we know that there are concerns around minimum lot sizes and spacing, for example, for wells. Or for septic systems. That's a concern we've come across a fair amount. We do think that there is still room for minimum lot size reform in areas that aren't connected to water and sewer, that can still account for adequate spacing, especially in some of the areas that require 2 or 4 acres, being well beyond the need to allow for adequate spacing. But our proposal specifically targets those areas that have existing infrastructure to support denser housing development. As you'll see, there are a lot of towns in this map that don't have any water or sewer infrastructure that would not be affected by our proposal, that could still, again, take positive action on their own to reform their minimum lot sizes. But our proposal from a statewide level is to look at those areas highlighted in orange here and reduce minimum lot sizes to 1/8 of an acre, which is still pretty capacious. We think there are lots of places here that should be well under that cap. But that 1/8 of an acre sends a modest, reasonable cap to develop the sorts of housing and walkable neighborhoods that we're interested in having throughout our state.
Great. Thank you, Nick. And with that, we're really happy you were here. We will put the recording up on our lots page. We look forward to seeing you at upcoming sessions. Please do spread the word about the November 30th event with commissioners post Thanksgiving that Pete mentioned, and check out our December events with experts on both transit-oriented communities and minimum lot sizes. Thank you, everybody. See you soon.